Okay, in this video what we're going to be doing is making the characters all stop, and we've got the gesture recognizer already set up for that. That's going to be our handle rotation recognizer, and of course we are just testing if the actual rotation has ended before we do anything. And what I'm going to do is add in this little method right here called stop all players and put into line. I'm going to call that from right here, self stop all players and put into line. Now the reason I'm not just doing all my work inside of the end state of this if statement is because later on we might decide that something else makes all these players stop and get put into a line, in which case we'll want to break out that method from just being inside of here. So let's get started, and the first thing that we're going to do is put in here ns object and then cancel, and let the compiler fill this in for you. You got two options. We just want this first one here, the simpler one, which is canceling previous perform requests with target, and specifically what that could be canceling is one of our perform selectors that we had already set into motion, namely these guys right here. Alright, handle swipe down, all these of course have that same perform selector in there. So if one of those was already scheduled to run, we're going to cancel those right there. Because we're stopping them, we don't want them to stop and then have that perform selector kick in. And actually, while we're kind of navigating around here, let's go ahead and copy this whole block of code from any one of your handle swipe methods, paste it into here. One reason is because we want that place in there as well. We can just strip out that and that, but otherwise we get to keep all that code in there that's already written. So we're going to enumerate through all of our children, cast them as a character, and if that character happens to be the leader, we'll do one thing. If they're not, then we'll do another thing. And we are gonna add one more integer in here to check out, which is going to be the leader direction. Okay, because what we want to do is we want to find that out and then pass that into whatever we tell the following characters when they stop, because depending on the current leader's direction, we want them to fall into that particular direction. And keep in mind, if there was that delay occurring, some of your characters might not be already facing that same way. So what we'll do is right over here, leader direction, that's going to equal leader. And there's a couple ways we could go about this. We could make the current direction be a property, or we could just put in here something like return direction. So we just send a method to the class, and let's go with that way of doing things. So we'll just go over here to CS character, go to the header file, just write in here void return direction. Oh, actually, no, there's a better thing we do. Something else we need to do. We're not returning void here, are we? We're actually returning the integer that we're interested in. So we're just going to put in here int return direction, and let's copy this, go over here to our implementation file, just sail down to the bottom, and let's put that right here at the very bottom. So all we're going to return is return current direction. And since I believe that's the only time we've returned anything from a method, at least so far in this class, it's a good thing I'm putting it in here just to show you how it's done. So anytime that we have a non-void parameter right here, or you are committed to returning something or other of that type. All right, so we're returning a integer that is our current direction right there, and we're not doing anything else. So we can just step right back over here to our CS level class. That little error should go away because it's going, hey, yeah, all right, you're returning to me from that method an integer, which I want to have, and we'll move on. So we'll now say leader stop moving, and this is going to be another call that is currently unwritten. So let's go back over here to our CS character class, and we'll put this over here. Stop moving. And what are we going to do for this? We are going to take our current direction, and we're going to make that equal to no direction at all. So we're going to write in here current direction equals no direction. And let's write character, remove all actions. And that's a new one for us too. Let me go over here and show you this. Ends and removes all actions from the node. When an action is removed from the node, any remaining animation the action would perform is skipped. That's important for us because if we were running that our walking frames animation that we haven't written yet, but if we were running that, that would stop that. And let's see, it is possible that actually make a final change. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so that's why we're doing it, just to handle up the textures. Now let's see. I think we're still just getting that error because. Oh, yeah, well, here's why. Because we haven't declared yet this method. So take that, go over here to your header file, and then just write that down there at the bottom. That should solve all of our problems. Go back over there, and sure enough, nice. Okay, so the leader has been told to stop moving, and that is immediate. One thing to note, though, too, is we do get the leader's previous direction prior to stopping the movement and telling him that his current direction is now equal to no direction. All right, so basically we're just storing what that last facing direction was. Okay, so now let's come down here and we're going to write this rather long method, character stop, and like our stop moving method, this one also begins with stop, but I'm going to say stop in formation with a little breath in the middle between in and formation. So it's not the word information, I'm just saying stop in formation. So and this is of course a method inside the class we haven't written yet, but let's go ahead and fill in the information here. So we're going to put in leader direction and place in line. All right, and obviously this will just end up being our place. All right, and then oops, we're also going to pass in here, let me put that right snug up against that one, our leader location. Told you we were putting a lot in. And this is going to be the leader dot position. And then I think we've got it all. Okay. So we've got to go write a nice little method for this. So stopping information, we're using the leader's direction. We're going to use the particular place. All right, so the basically 1 or 2 in our case, and then the leader's position will get used to basically determine how far back the characters stop behind the particular leader. All right, so let me put a little note here that just says, for place in line, 1 is the first follower, 2 is the second follower, and 0 is the leader. Just so you remember that. All right, let's take all this and come over here to our header file so we can declare this. Actually, I'll just write it from scratch. We'll just put without pasting it in, that might be confusing. All right, so stop in formation. The first thing we specified in here was the direction. All right. Actually, I will paste this in just so you can kind of compare. So this was our call, right? Stop information, and then we passed in the leader direction. All right, so we're going to set up that parameter there. Okay, it's an int type, and then within our method we can refer to that as direction, and then and place in line, and this is going to be an int as well. That'll be place, and then leader. Put that right there. And then leader location is going to be a CG point variable. And we'll refer to that inside the method as location. Okay, so that and that match up, right? That and that match up, and yeah, get rid of that. Now let's copy out this, take it over to here. We'll put this underneath our current stop moving one, and it's probably about time we put a little pragma mark up here for stop moving. Okay, now we actually just need to do something inside of that method. Okay, we are going to set up some integers for the padding between the leader and the following characters. All right, so we're going to put in here int padding x is going to equal character dot frame dot size dot width divided by 2. And that might end up being one of those numbers that you decide to fudge a little bit in your final version, but I think it worked out all right for me. And then character.frame.size.height divided by 2 for the padding along the y-axis. So this is going to create some separation between the characters, and I'm just using here the character, the image of the character, and I'm just dividing that into half. All right, so now we're going to say if direction, now remember we passed in the leader's direction, okay, if that was up at the time that we found out the leader direction, then we're going to do one thing, else, let's go ahead and just copy these in, else if direction equals down, else if, oops, else if direction equals right, else if direction equals left. Okay, and by the way, the warnings I'm sure are just saying that this is an unused variable. All right, so now let's start with up. CG point new position is going to equal CG point make, oops, this will be location. All right, now remember that's the value that we passed in of the leader's location, location.x, and then put a comma here, location.y, and then here's where we work out our little equation, minus, and then I'd go ahead and put this into parentheses, padding dot y multiplied by our place. And let's see, are we ready to close that off? I think so. All right, think about this. If we are traveling upwards, all right, then any follower, all right, is going to be behind the leader. So leader's up here at the top. If we were to subtract from the y, that would be somewhere down here. And we're just taking the padding y times the place. All right, so whatever this value was, we're just going to multiply that, and the first time around that's just going to be 1, so that'll just be whatever this equals, and second time around that'll be 2, so the place would equal 2, so that'll be that multiplied by, sorry, this one right here, and it should help to move them into a line. Now, actually, in terms of moving them into a line, we need to write an SK action here. So we're going to write SK action move into line equals SK action move to new position, and then your duration here, let's just make this be 0.5. So half a second it'll take. And then we're going to set up another SK action. This one we're going to call stop. It's going to equal sk action perform selector at, let me just put in here selector stop moving. Now of course stop moving is what we just wrote for the leader, and then we put on target self. And stop moving of course is not necessarily always going to be for the leader, but it's just convenient that we can now go and call this action, or basically just this selector, stop moving, and we're going to do this in a sequence. So we're going to do this first, and then we're going to call that. And how, you ask? Well, what's this? Here's our final action here, and we're going to say sk action sequence, and you can just put in here sequence equals sk action sequence. And you have to start these off with a with that little @ symbol to a opening bracket, closing bracket, and inside now of these two brackets right here, we're just going to put in move into line and stop. So we put in our two actions. If you had more than that, and you're welcome to, you just comma separate them and keep putting them in. And there we go. Of course, the remaining error here is that we haven't used the sequence yet. So all we have to do is write self run action sequence. Okay. Sprite Kit actions are new if you didn't watch my free video on Sprite Kit. So it's just a simple way of doing something or other. In this case, we're moving to a position, and we just give it that duration right there. All right, and same thing with this one. What's nice is that these sk actions can do nothing more than just call another method, and that's all that is. Just putting them into a sequence. So the first one will run, and then the second one will run. They don't run at the same time. It's one after another. And now I think all we have to do is just go and do a little bit of copy and paste action to make changes on these other ones. This one we are just going to add to the value. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't think so. And you know, it's funny. Now that I'm looking at this, I think what we could do is we can condense all of this into. We could just make these CG point variables different in these if statements and run all of these afterwards. So you guys want to get a little crazy here? Let's do that. So let's take out all of that, and then we'll just run that after these if statements. And to do this properly, we'll need to then set up our CG point new position outside of the conditions. So that's now declared outside of those. And then, all right, so we'll just pick up where we left off. So this one is going to be the location .x minus, then we're going to subtract the padding x times the place value, and we leave the y-axis alone on that one. And then if we are going left, we are just going to add that value. Okay, so now we can really tighten up our code a bit. That helps a lot. It's just another one of those cases where you don't realize how repetitive you're being while you're coding. But yeah, with a little hindsight, I think we're good to go. So let's test it out and see what happens. By the way, while it's loading up here, it might be kind of tempting to make that a variable in the property list, but could also be kind of a confusing one. Not to set up, but just, you know, might forget, what does that do again? All right, so walking along, let's twist. There we go. Nice. And again, this runs a little bit differently on the actual device because you're running more frames per second. But yeah, this is about all I can ask for here. I like that. Just kind of gets them back into some sort of semblance of a formation, and there we go. They're all kind of running around, aren't they?